Hey, how's it going? Um, you know, once in a while, when somebody writes something that's really good, I love to cover it. And in this case, Jeff G. Bailey comes through again. This is based on the Britt Baker Thunder Rosa match from Dynamite on Wednesday. He wrote a little thing. I thought it was really great. So I wanted to kind of look at it here and kind of give my own thoughts on top of it, right? Um, he starts off pro wrestling at its absolute finest. A many months long feud with several hot angles, with this long term build to a genuine blow off, unsanctioned main event match that delivered in every possible way imaginable. This was, without a doubt, the most enjoyable piece of modern mainstream wrestling I've watched in a very long time. I can honestly say I wish I'd seen this match live more than the exploding barbed wire match that I did attend last week. I can't believe I just wrote that. That might not be true, but I feel that way writing this now. And I was at that exploding barbed wire match, death match, and um, I would say that I remember the feeling in that building, right? Which was, even if you're a big fan of AEW as I am, the way that that thing ended with that fizzle, it just took all the joy out of me. And even though I thought the Moxley and Omega wrestled this great, fantastic match with a number of spots and good storytelling, and again, it's amazing the difference that one technical thing makes, because if that had been a big concussive explosion, it changes the whole nature of the event. It does remind me of thing that theater people have said, which is the third act, the finish is the most important because that's what people remember. The beginning is the second most important part because that's the thing that sets the tone. And then the middle is the least important. And I think when you apply that analysis to the barbed wire death match, it's definitely true. Because just by that thing fizzling out, instantly that whole thing falls apart, even though the match itself was very good. How did Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker do? I think when you look at that finish of diving off of the apron and hitting that Thunder Fire Driver through the table as the finish, it felt worthy. Even though they had done a bunch of big stuff that they had kicked out of, that's a move that definitely they had set up. Because, as you know, I watch everything, right? I watch all the darks and every Dynamite and all of this other stuff. So I've seen how they've established this as Thunder Rosa's finisher, her impact-oriented finisher. She's hit this move again and again and again. So I knew that was the end. And so it was very satisfying. How did it start? Again, there was like the kind of weak crutch shot by Rebel, but I knew as soon as Britt Baker hit that dive to the outside and took her down and then hit her with the move on the floor, I was like, they are off and running in this thing. And so again, for wrestling people, wrestlers in particular, you've got to nail the finish. That's why I had that commentary not so long ago on A Full Disclosure about how everybody's doing these like fuck finishes in main events and how it's a bad precedent to set because that's the last impression people are leaving your event with. And whether you know it or not, I mean, all these groups that are doing these screwy finishes for their main events, they've all suffered crowds going down at the next show. There's a reason for that. Like I said, if it's not gaining you heat, it's a bad finish. And in this case, I don't know. Jeff asked me yesterday, do you think they're still riding high off of their match? And I would guarantee it. I would assure you that they are because, come on, they killed it, right? When Thunder Rosa hit that beautiful finish on Britt's head and neck off of the apron through the table, and I saw the tears in her eyes, she made the cover and lovingly brushed Britt's hair out of her mouth. I knew exactly what she knew at that moment, and that was together they had achieved absolute perfection. They both knew that they had made magic together. Not to discount Rebels, parentheses, not Reba's contribution, as she was fantastic in her role as always. Yes, it was a match that was so good that Rebels great bump off of the apron through the table isn't even really remembered. Because again, it's in the middle of the match. It's the least important part. But Rebel being there and doing her part with the Britt Baker thing, it just really works. And anybody who's been following AEW, even though Britt Baker's the heel, the way that they built her up when she was hurt, the fact that they went the opposite way with her, right? When people get hurt, the natural inclination is they're a babyface when they return. Instead, they went harder in the heel direction with these kind of insincere rehabilitation vignettes, which is kind of blasphemy when you think about it, right? When you think about when you have a legitimate injury and you're sort of making light of your comeback, it's a very heel thing to do, and they did it. They really believed in Britt Baker. They gave her that talk show as well, The Waiting Room. But something that I love is when they felt like that talk show had run its course, they just stopped doing it. They don't force it. They don't bring it back every so. They just let it end. Now, it's not to say that they won't bring it back again, but I like that they've just let Britt Baker do her thing. And if you don't think that this is a feud that culminated with the right person in Thunder Rosa, I think Thunder Rosa is getting sort of short shift in all of this. That's the only negative that I see, is people are rightfully lavishing praise on Britt Baker. I've seen posts by everybody just like, Britt Baker, unbelievable. She's got the shirt with the blood and blah, blah, blah. Thunder Rosa more than did her part. And that didn't do her part. I mean, she carried her end of it. She really carried the wrestling end of it. And even if you look at that finish, it's a very dangerous move they pulled off. And you could see Thunder Rosa physically making sure she would be able to hit this move. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. Total pro. I think as much as Britt Baker's stock has risen, Thunder Rosa's has risen equally as well. I think the only thing that really holds it back, if I'm being honest, is this idea of people not knowing if she's still with the NWA or not, which she is. But I think people would just as soon go, no matter what the contract situation is, I think it's pretty clear that Thunder Rosa is perceived as an AEW person and somebody who's led this charge of AEW getting better. Yeah, so I don't want to be remiss in that. Britt Baker was absolutely fantastic, flawless even. But Thunder Rosa didn't just go along for the ride. Thunder Rosa really probably did the majority of the wrestling part of it and protected Britt Baker incredibly well throughout some very difficult spots. If you look at that like Death Valley driver onto the ladder and the way Thunder Rosa basically risked her own safety to make sure Britt Baker would hit that ladder in a way that was okay. I really admire that. And of course, I'm a big Thunder Rosa fan, and both of them gave everything in this throughout the build of the feud. I remember that thing where Britt Baker took Thunder Rosa down in the lobby and then took the water and poured it on her and rubbed the makeup all over her face. There was something that was incredibly disrespectful about that in a good getting heat wrestling way. And the way that Thunder Rosa, people try to make fun of it, but like, oh, why are all these heels scattering just because little old Thunder Rosa's hitting the ring? That just shows they don't know anything about AEW, because Thunder Rosa is frightening. And she's billed as somebody who's going to destroy you when she hits that ring. And I think all of this culminated in a match that was more than worthy. I was talking to Jeff and others and saying how, do you remember who was the first women's main event on Raw? And they said, yeah, it was Trish and Lita. And I actually wrote a piece about that because Lita like took this header onto the floor and was out of it. And Trish carried her through the rest of that match. And I said how that shows that Trish is probably the best woman working at that time, even though that was a time where there were a ton of great women working. But this exceeded that. This more than lived up to hype. Really unbelievable. Because what's the point of the main event? You have two jobs. Create the hype, live up to the hype. A ton of hype was created around this match. Even the graphics and stuff that were used to promote this fight were awesome. Just off the charts great. AEW is really leading the charge in that stuff. And these two women more than lived up to the hype. And Rebel as well. If you still enjoy professional wrestling, watch this match. I absolutely loved it. I expected it to be good. I was looking forward to it, but completely blew my mind by how great it was. Yeah. The waterfalls of tears that flowed backstage as everyone crowded around them, wanting to tell them how great it was, to hug them, to just connect themselves to this night in some way. That's really it, isn't it? Yeah. To somehow imagine yourself a part of what these ladies accomplished must have included everyone in the building. I can't think of a better thing for a promotion and its team to come together over than your teammates having the best match possible when put out there in the main event position to lead the way and completely over-delivering. A triumph in every way imaginable. Yes, it was bloody, and that greatly appeals to me. But way beyond just the blood in this match delivered in every way, with everything I ever loved about professional wrestling. It's unquestionably something special. Go out of your way to see this. I noticed Britt Baker on the very short list of things I really liked about AEW on my little write-up about the pay-per-view. I mean, I ain't one to say I told you so, but I doubt anyone is sleeping on her after this one. Congratulations to both of these ladies. They achieved something most of you will never even sniff in this lifetime. It'd be hard to understand me because my jaw keep locking. Yeah, it's a great feeling when you actually match your lofty expectations or exceed them. And I find it interesting when I see people post about this, when a lot of people are going, I don't like AEW, but this was great. And I always think of how funny it is that people have tribed up with wrestling promotions and their own ideas about wrestling as much as people have tribed up politically. I think it's really stupid. Of course, I have preferences and things that I like, but I can also acknowledge when things are good. For God's sakes, I cover everything, right? I just cover every conceivable thing. So the crazy thing is, I knew this was going to be that great. I knew it had the potential to be what it was. Am I still shocked that it met it? Of course. Aren't we? Isn't that part of what we watch wrestling for? Is to have our expectations met. Even I was thinking about this with the Snyder cut of Justice League. You can see how people are talking about it, that it's really not about the thing itself. It's really an indication of who they are and where they stood and how they were perhaps shifted in their position or not, and how everything gets filtered through their own sort of lens of how they want to see a thing. I noticed a number of people said, I can't wait to see what Jim Cornette says, because there's the people that are hoping that he acknowledges the obvious, which was this was great. But then there's also the people who are like, Jim, give me a reason to not like this. Explain to me why I shouldn't like this because of his bias. So let me just declare this. The last thing that Jeff's writing, which is phenomenal, and you should go read it, Jeff G. Bailey on Facebook. You should already be friends with him and be reading his shit. Of course you should. But something that I find really interesting to me is I was thinking about this. You have like Dave Meltzer, who everything AEW does is great, everything the WWE does is shit, everything Japan does is great. And then you have Jim Cornette. AEW can do no right except for MJF and FTR, who no matter what dumb shit they do, they can do no wrong. And then I realized, like, I do have an important role, which is to see things as clearly as I can and to present it that way. Now, I'm not saying I'm as big as Dave Meltzer or Jim Cornette. I'm just saying I'm not a freaking sad old man that has to dig my heels in about what my opinion is, and pretend that I'm bigger than the wrestling business itself just to make a buck. Ooh, pretty harsh. Pretty harsh. In any case, this has been Steve taking a look at Jeff G's great writing about Thunder Rosa against Britt Baker. Have a great weekend, y'all.